This week, Mulele, Oscar, Chris, and I discuss Katsuhiro Otomo's classic, Akira. If you summarize the story, it sounds really heavy, but is it? And is it Otomo's best work? First, support this and all of our shows by joining us on Patreon. You can support us for as little as $2 a month. Get extra content for $4 a month. Pledge $10 a month for at least 3 months, and you're eligible to review the book of your choice with me on the podcast. Go to patreon.com/deconcomics to join the fun. We appreciate your support.
This is Tim.
And Mulele.
This is Chris.
And Oscar.
And this is Deconstructing Comics. Welcome to Deconstructing Comics. This is Tim with the other people you heard at the top there, Mulele, Chris, and Oscar, gathered in a meeting room in Shinjuku, Tokyo, to talk about Katsuhiro Otomo's Akira, which, well, it came up to do an Akira episode because I'd never read it, and then last fall, Alberto Melendez, who is a patron, he qualified to choose a book and review it with me on the show, and he chose Domu, the predecessor to Akira. And I was impressed enough with that then I wanted to read Akira, and I knew Mulele, ever since I've known Mulele, he would talk about how Akira was influential on him. And so I wanted to include Mulele in it, and then Mulele said, let's call Chris and Oscar too. So here we are. So Mulele, you read it when? Like early 90s?
I read it in the, read is kind of in quotations here, but I read it in the 80s. 16-year-old me found it in a Japanese bookstore in Japanese, volume 1. And I, at the time, was looking at Urusei Yatsura and Lupin and Hokuto no Ken. And just more or less impressed with the art and the themes and the kind of adult nature of some of them. Mm-hmm. But this one blew me away in how mechanically precise it was. Mm-hmm. And I bought it. And I fell in love with it. It was everything. And at the time, considering what American comics were, I was living in San Francisco at the time, but mechanics or technology in America seemed to be consumed by just giant TV screens, multiple TV screens on a black surface, or sometimes you'd get some really, really funky kind of ergonomic for aliens hardware. It was all like not designed for humans, but it was all kind of smooth and contorted and whatnot. But this one looked like it was designed by a person who had who is stripping everything down to its base function and not adding anything extra to it. Some of the ships didn't look like they could fly very much, but they looked like they could do something sciencey, which I really, really liked. So I was very impressed by that, and that people were dying in the books.
Yeah, which you certainly didn't see in Comics Code approved 80s Marvel. Yeah,
and that's kind of the point where I decided, okay, number one, I need to come to Japan. Number two, I need to. Oh, you got the Japanese version too?
Yeah. Well, because when I was ordering this on Amazon, I accidentally ordered the Japanese version of Volume 6. So
okay.
I got the other 5 here in English.
Okay. Well, if you want to sell it to me later, I'll buy it. But it also showed me an average kid up against an immeasurable force, which was the opposite of American comics at the time. Superhero person fighting bank robbers with guns is the most boring thing you can do. And so, yeah, for me, this was it. This is what blew American comics at the time out of the water for me, and I was done. After that, I spent the next 4 years trying to get to Japan, and by 20 I was here.
Chris, what's been your experience with Akira in your life?
Kind of similar, like, progression, but for me, it started off with the animation, because back then, in my area at least, manga and comics weren't as strong. If anyone's lived in central New Jersey, like, there's no comic book shops. You go to convenience stores, and you have Sonic the Hedgehog, Archie Comics, Batman, Superman, and that's it. So, for me, it started off with animation. When a friend of mine was like, "Hey, you really gotta watch this. This is amazing," and it was a copy of Akira, and I watched it, and I watched it again, and I watched it again, and I think I stayed up all night just like rewatching it over. I was like, "This is amazing! I can't believe that people drew this, like created this." Only to find out at that pinnacle point of life, like, oh right, it came from a comic book. And then I was on the hunt for these comics. And again, I moved to Philadelphia. I got my hands on some manga at the time, but not everything. The first interaction was when these did come out, and someone had the first book and the second book, and I'm like, well, I'm on spring break. Can I borrow the first book? And went to my room. Yes, drawing and reading and practicing and then drawing, and I learned that I really sucked at perspective and I couldn't draw backgrounds. But
reading these books, every artist in the world realized they sucked in some way. That's just a given. And that's not just you, that's all of us.
But it was a different tone. The pacing was definitely different than what was there in the movie, and it kind of stuck with me, like that design. It was, I don't know, it definitely became a part of my life as always, like, that's something that I should always remember. But yeah, I was with the movie first, and then I found the books, and then now in Japan, I'm definitely going to be like going the book off and like, oh look, there's all 6 of them. I have money in my pocket. I should just get this. I should just keep this in my library. But yeah, that's me.
Oscar, how about you?
I started from the movie too, but I didn't quite get into it from my first viewing. I think I saw the movie a little too young, and it was around the time I was watching stuff like the Ghost in the Shell movie and everything, which had like the right amount of robots and sexy girls to be very interesting to me. And then Akira was like violence, and it was one violence too many for me at the time. I picked up the books later, I think, but never really got into them until now. It was actually the first time for this podcast that I gave him a proper read. I think in the period in between, I always wanted to catch up on them, but Akira just, its reputation precedes it to the point where you're reading this colossal, amazing classic, and it makes it kind of hard to just pick it up and go like, oh, let's have a quick read of Akira. I kind of want to rewatch the movie now though, because I feel like I could properly absorb it this time around. But I was definitely blown away reading these properly this time around. It's like, oh, halfway through like the second book or something, it was like, oh, now I get it what everyone was talking about all these years. So yeah, I'm a bit of a latecomer to the Akira phenomenon, I guess.
Yeah, well, I'm even later, because like I said, I had not read anything by Otomo until I read Domu last year for the podcast, and then I realized what I was missing. Like, oh, I see. So, have any of you guys read Domu? It's been out of print for a long time in English.
Oh, heard about it, but never got a copy of it.
I read it after I read Akira, and for me, Domu is actually more interesting than Akira.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah. It was just that it's a smaller scale. I'm not sure exactly where it was modeled. I had heard that it was modeled off of Takashima Daira.
I think that's a certain housing place where people were actually killing themselves for some reason.
Yeah, that was the one of the high-rise apartment buildings at the time, and people used to use it as a jump-off point. And it's actually
literally,
that's what I meant.
Yeah,
but they used to use that for suicides, and it became quite a fashionable suicide spot. So they now have bars up, so no one can actually jump off of anything above the second floor is just covered in bars, so no one can jump off from the hallways. But I had also heard that it was actually based on another place, maybe in Yokohama or some other place. I don't know, but it's a short, really tight precursor to Akira.
Yeah, complete with a kid with mental powers. It deals with some of the same ideas, but then Akira just inflates that idea to this huge scale. And it doesn't. If we just read the first volume, it seems like it's about a motorcycle gang,
right?
But as you go through the book, it just gets bigger and bigger. The scale just becomes huge, and the kinds of power that some of the characters have are way off the charts, and some of the imagery gets weirder and weirder.
And that's also one thing that I think people probably don't realize it if they're only referencing the movie. There's a whole battle and struggle and war between the characters, the other half of the way. Half of the book is the motorcycle gangs, how some of them get involved, military is involved, then these children are there, and if you are a moviegoer, you see it through Kaneda, one of his focus up until battling Katsuhiro, and then done. That's it. It's over. You don't see about the two factions, them struggling to live in this newer society, or even Akira himself there in the story. You don't know about that. And that's something where when I was rechecking information, I'm like, right, he never did really appear in the movie. He was referenced, but there was not a physical
interesting
body of him. He wasn't there. He was.
There were some jars, I guess.
Yeah. There were his body was broken up into pieces, but they never physically reconstructed him, and you never saw the character of Akira there.
I would normally try to summarize the plot, but I don't know. The Wikipedia summary takes a while to read. I'm not sure how you make this brief.
To make it very, very brief, this story is just about friends.
Okay.
Aww.
That's what it is in the beginning, and that's what it is at the end. These two friends, they're in a bike gang. Of course, one of them is a bit of an alpha, and the other one becomes his beta. And the beta begins to have feelings of resentment for his position. And eventually it kind of comes to a head when he finds he has these new powers. But at the end of the book, it comes back full circle and says all we wanted to be was friends. As I'm reading this, I'm crying at the end.
Yeah.
It's it's so beautiful.
Yeah, although, it was 8 in Japanese in Young Magazine. It took 8 years to come out, 1982 to 90. So reading it in 1990, if you can still remember what was going on in the 82... Well,
actually, I'm not sure if it was ancillary material or what, but I remember there were still drips and drabs coming out until 93. So that date might actually be
in Japanese.
Yeah, in Japanese. That date might be off a little bit. I'm not exactly sure if it was the end of the book, and I think I have seen other places it mentioned that it was 82 to 93. It was an 11-year project. But to the point of dates, there's something in this book that I noticed halfway through, and it kind of bothered me. This book takes place in...
Well, it depends on if you're reading the Japanese version or the English version.
Exactly.
Yeah. So what Wikipedia pointed out, in Japanese, the what they think was a new bomb that goes off before the story begins on December 6, 1982. In the English version, it was 92.
I think in the movie it was 88.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I guess that came in between, so you just had to keep pushing it later and later. In the Japanese original manga, the story starts in 2019, and they're preparing for, coincidentally, Tokyo Olympics in 2020.
Yeah.
Although in this version, English version, they screw that up because they start the story in 2030 and say that there's going to be Olympics in 2031, which is not an Olympic year.
Yeah.
Because the leap years are Olympic years. 2032 would be an Olympic year, but
given the amount of detail that Otomo Katsuhiro puts into his books, I don't think he would make that kind of mistake. So this decision was some sort of late stage editorial thing, I think, rather than something that he requested.
I guess it came about when Marvel put it out on their Epic imprint, starting in 1988.
Fucking Marvel.
And that one, so they put it out as 38 issues, finishing in 1995, because the last 8 took several years to get out. I guess part of the reason for the delay was that Otomo was touching up the art.
Yeah, he was.
And so they didn't have the touch-ups ready in time to get stuff out on schedule.
But I don't know exactly what happened with the Epic thing. I bought the first couple of volumes, or a couple of issues. It was really slow and painful to see this thing kind of chug along. Was it once a month or once every couple of weeks? I don't know. And it was also very, very, very expensive. 38 volumes versus these 6 volumes. Japanese comics are cheap, as for the consumer anyway. And only in price, not in experience, because fuck the value of these books. But the Epic version was in color.
Yeah, Otomo personally chose Steve Oliff to color it.
Yeah, those colors are fucked. I don't know what happened.
It was the first ongoing comic to feature computer coloring.
Yeah, and that's
the color effects, the shading effects, I didn't mind so much, the fades and gradations and whatnot, but it was the color choices that were there. Now, in the movie, the color choices, yeah, they're sublime, and there's a lot to learn from that film, even today, about color and color design. But those comics, I much prefer the black and white version. And I don't know what Otomo Katsuhiro was thinking, but it might have been, you know, the little bit of a tangent, the Japanese version of Star Wars.
Was there a change in it?
Well, the
movie, you mean,
the movie, the first one from
The original.
1977, when it was being dubbed into Japanese, they pulled out some really good voice actor for the role of Luke Skywalker. George Lucas swooped in and said, "No, he's too good. My actor sucked, and I want this guy to suck too. So get this suckier guy to do Mark Hamill's voice." And maybe not in those exact words, but basically he chose the lesser actor, saying it matched the performance of the actor he had. And I don't know what Otomo's logic was, but maybe there was something of that kind of thing. But I can't stand Epic's version of Akira. Epic had some good work back in the 80s, but that was not it.
So as I mentioned, I accidentally bought the Japanese volume of volume 6. So I read on a cheesy scanned website. I read the last 1/6 of it in English from the Epic version that was scanned in there. So I saw what that looked like, and I could see some differences, like the character K in these English Kodansha versions that came out, I think, about 10 years ago. She's Kei, but in the Epic version, she's Kay. It made it more like English, the English name K. rather than the Japanese name K. But yeah, I guess also Dark Horse put out a 6-volume set about 20 years ago.
That's right.
And these Kodansha versions, I guess, are about the same as the Dark Horse ones.
Yeah.
What are we looking at there?
You both were right there. It says here it's listing the original publication from Young magazine, 1990, but then the first collected version was 93.
Okay.
So you both are right.
Well, there you go.
It's good that you got the Japanese version.
There's a lot of destruction and violence in this, and I mean, of course, there was that initial explosion before the story starts sets off World War III. Although that's never really explained why it set off World War III. So now Tokyo has been rebuilt into Neo Tokyo,
and there's a Japanese military that they specifically call the army. There's no army currently. It's a Japanese self-defense force.
If I can jump in here a quick second though, because if you just hearing it being described this way, it makes me feel the way I always felt about Akira, hearing about it like it's this huge, heavy kind of massive, and I felt reading it, it's surprisingly light. Yeah, it goes deep, but it's like
the instances of goofy humor.
Yeah,
here and
it's like I felt it was kind of like watching an action movie. Like you have all these intrigues and plots in the government, but like the pacing is very fast and the tone is like, yeah, there's goofy stuff, there's humor in there, there's like little romances. It's because when you hear about like there's Akira and you know the movie with all the gory parts and the explosions and World War III, and it sounds like this is such a heavy book. I don't want to pick it up because I don't want to bum myself out.
That's why I think I never picked it up before.
Me as well. But so to anyone listening who's thinking about picking it up, it's very light. It's very poppy flavor. It goes deep, but it doesn't drag you down very heavy and makes you feel all bummed out. It sounds like it does, but it's as
Mulele was saying, it's uplifting at the end and kind of touching. If you remember the beginning, then you see how it circles back around at the end after all the crap that goes on in between.
Yeah, about the first volume, it is kind of rough the way he draws it. There's a lot of detail and a lot of design work, and he lays a lot of heavy groundwork for it stylistically, but the way it flows through the comic is a little bit rough. So I think he's just trying to feel his way through the action as he goes. I know he's got a plot that he has in mind, but he doesn't really hit his stride until you get to the second volume, where everything begins to smooth out and the transitions are smoother, and what he's trying to express to the readers is a little bit more finely rendered. I'm not talking about the art style. The art style stays pretty consistent through most of it. It gets a little bit it changes a little bit towards the last two volumes, but for the most part, it is still the same style.
Yeah, getting to the end and then going back to the beginning, I noticed how the look of the character K sort of changed over time. Kaneda looks about the same, but K looks really... if you go back and read from the beginning, and that's K?
Yeah.
Yeah, she has a more like stylish bob to her.
Yeah. Well, we're talking early 80s, and if he was developing the characters earlier than that, then 1980, 1981? So I can imagine he's got some like remnants of the 70s kind of creeping through.
Yeah, when women's hairstyles can change a lot in 8 years.
I find Kay to be a bit of a hot mess in general. I don't know if we want to get into that right now, but...
Because of her growing arc, or just what?
Shall we get into that, or you
want go ahead.
Kei is my least favorite thing about Akira, because I feel she's very underused, and it's it's a boys' show, and she's like the only prominent girl in there, and does basically nothing. She has no real like force or power or initiative of her own. Like the first volumes, to skim over the story, she's working for this underground rebel organization with her so-called brother, which turns out to be this older guy she's in love with. So, and strangely, she's like very stereotypical, the Japanese girl, like playing off to Tetsuo is like the rough kid, and she's like, ooh, I'm not gonna touch that kind of girl, which is like a bit of an anime stereotype. But I always found it weird because she's supposed to be like this. She's a woman in a guerrilla fighter group. That should tough you up, and still she's like, ooh, broke a fingernail kind of.
She does shoot some people.
Oh sure, but I felt like I never felt like even there like her character really adds up, because she's supposed to be like the softer touch to Tetsuo's roughness, but it doesn't really mesh with her background as like this female guerrilla fighter. And then the coolest thing she probably does is like she goes all like super Terminator and like gonna get you out of here, gonna destroy all these guys, and I was like, oh wow, she's finally hitting her stride. And it's like, oh no, she was mind controlled by these other people, and they keep bringing her into the story, giving her a role, and she's always in a supporting role. She never gets to do anything herself. Like even when everyone has powers near the end, there's like so many and they're like, oh, by the way, Kay, you're very important too, because you have superpowers too. Don't worry, they're not cool powers like everyone else. You have the power to help people with powers, because you're a girl. You don't do things yourself.
She's a badass version of Shizuka-chan from Doraemon.
And she's like, yeah, basically. And then she's like, all right, let me just take my clothes off and have a full nudity shot here. It's like, all right, thank you. And yeah, I find her, and like, I wanted to say the treatment of women in general, but they do have one excellent character. I forgot her name, but like the aunt.
Oh, Chiyoko.
This huge gorilla woman who like doesn't take shit from anyone, and she's just kicking ass like all the way to basically the whole city explodes, and she's like, even the rebel group I think is basically lost, and she just keeps going and keeps kicking ass like all the way through the book, which is amazing. But I feel like that should have been part of that coolness. Should have been Kay. Because Kay never does anything really cool. She's always like the virgin princess kind of archetype, and I feel like that's such a thing that like anime and like Japan in general, they just have problem writing good women characters, and it was kind of a thorn in my side how she never, because she's the one character who has like the potential to do it. You have one of the other females that's in there is Kaori, Kanada's girl, but she's not really there to develop. She's just a tragic character. So she didn't have any potential. I like her a lot as a character, but she's not particularly written. I don't have any gripes with her, but she's not a very rounded character. She's just like this. Oh, I'm kind of going with the flow as well, and I feel like if I had one major criticism of Akira, it'd be like either leave Kay out of it or give her something to do. Because I feel like she was in there because it's like the editor wants you to put a girl in there kind of deal. Where it's like, here's all the boys doing cool stuff, and there's a girl in there too. Because you need. I felt like most of the story she was there so the reader had something pretty to look at while the story went on.
And the love interest for the finale.
Oh yeah, which also was kind of weird, because Tetsuo starts out this amazing roughneck kid, and one of my favorite lines is actually in the first book. While he has this nurse girlfriend he's messing around with, and she's like, I might be pregnant, and he's like, oh cool, can I watch when you give birth? And then that just sets him up all the way. Like that line gives us all we need to know about this guy, and he somehow goes from there to being like the action hero that saves the day. But because he just runs after Cake. He's like, oh woman, nice, and somehow this has like they try to turn it into a more believable romance without, like you never emotionally see him grow from being the can I watch guy to the savior who holds Kay in his arms, is like, you're all right now, baby. It's like he's the same horn dog as in in the first book, but
actually, you're absolutely right. He doesn't really progress as a character, and I think that is a bit of a fault for this series. And also, Kay and Coyote, both of them are used in the same way. They're both used as a reason to do something rather than a person in their own right doing something that they want to do. In Coyote's case, she's the reason for Tetsuo to kind of be weak or
vulnerable.
Yeah, he's got his vulnerable moments with that, and she's also the one who calms him down a little bit. But when she dies, he loses his shit, and it's the same with Kay. She's the reason that Kaneda chases he chases after her and then gets mixed up in this whole thing because of her, and that's it. That was the end of her use. And to be honest, she should have been written out, died, or as you say, gotten an actual reason to be there. And the idea that she's used that way in volumes 1 and 2, and then by volume 4 or 5, she's being used by these psychics as a conduit. There are problems with that. Maybe Otomo has some issues with women. I don't know.
Well, and Oscar mentioned that she was apparently in love with Ryu, who's her compatriot in the revolutionary organization, but that's isolated to this one weird scene in like volume 4 where they're kissing each other and they both have their eyes open, and Chiyoko thinks that he's hitting on Kay and wants to beat him up, but Kay says, no, I really love him, but then that's never revisited. Even when Ryu dies, it's like uncommented on by anyone, let alone Kay, and now she's in love with him.
Now she's available. That's the main takeaway of that.
That's why
story.
He dies, I think, just to sweep that one up. But she never is shown to mourn him at all. And why didn't we see her flirting with him or something in the early volumes when we saw them together a lot more? Ryu and Kay.
I also want to mention that, like, in the story, there is it stands out this much because I was flipping through the books here to get it right, but I'll probably get it wrong. So around the 3rd book, I guess there's like the big reset moment, and Tetsuo actually disappears from 1 book, I think.
From volume.
So 3. there is a space there, and I think the book mostly follows Kay there, and there was like an opportunity to do something with her, but she just like keeps the story going until Tetsuo is like, all right, I'm back in the driver's seat, move over, and
Kaneda comes back. Kaneda's missing from most of volume 4, I think.
Oh, Kaneda, I get it.
And so Kay's hanging out and Tetsuo's hanging out, but I don't recall that she did very much, really.
So it's like, why have him off the stage and give the stage to her if she's not going to do anything with it?
What the deal was with Kaneda? Where was he? Why was he gone? Where did he come from? Why did Otomo take him out for a volume?
And his return is pretty bullshit as well.
There you are.
It is like someone suddenly, I don't know, maybe a friend came over and it's like, man, where's Kaneda? I thought this was about him. He's been gone for a volume. It's, oh shit! Let me just put him back in. Okay,
I can
there
write,
you are.
I can write girls. No, I can't.
It could just be the victim of time kind of a thing. Because nowadays, when you look at stories, when you look at how media and comics are being written, they do consider that everyone needs to have like moving parts. Everyone needs to have their active role, their kind of arc. But it's very much like you guys were saying, tools for people to be used in order to progress the story or themselves forward. And that could just be a victim of the time period as well, because there's lots of stories where it's just the story needs to get finished. we need to get this out there. It needs to get printed, and the time periods that we know for people doing Jump magazines is not friendly at all. So it could have just been, okay, the story's progressing, let's keep this going, and no one took even a second look at the other supporting characters. But on the contrary, there is a lot of characters throughout the story here. That is something that you can find someone else to kind of link into and enjoy while you're progressing through the story. Developed or not is a different story.
Coming up, odd subplots. Is the ending of Akira rather slapdash? The comic's incorrect guesses about the future. Does Akira still stand up? And more. I'm continuing to republish classic episodes of Deconstructing Comics in reverse order, unlocked by our patrons' generous support. This week's is number 65 from March 5th, 2007, in which Brandon and I review Alex Robinson's Box Office Poison. The classic episodes can be found on our Facebook and Twitter feeds by clicking on the earliest months listed on the left sidebar at deconstructingcomics.com, or in publicly available posts on our Patreon page, or in the Patreon smartphone app. Classic episodes have been unlocked back to number 46. You can help to unlock earlier episodes by pledging. We're also approaching a goal that would unlock ad-free episodes available to patrons only. Check out all our goals and help us reach them at patreon.com/deconcomics.
You like cheap comic books, right? Well, I'm Professor Allen, and I talk about cheap comic books on the Quarterbin podcast. In every episode, I'll dissect a single comic from my collection, as long as I paid no more than 25 cents for the issue. Forget about $4 new comics that you can read in 4 minutes, or crossover events that can cost $100 to collect. Join me in the Quarterbin, where even bad comics are a bargain, and good ones are a steal. The Quarterbin podcast is part of the Relatively Geeky Podcast Network. Visit us at relativelygeekypodcast.blogspot.com or search Relatively Geeky or Quarterbin Podcast in iTunes. I guarantee it'll be worth every penny.
Well, yeah, I mean, there are some weird subplots that I kind of wondered why they were there. Early on, there's like this agent who is in a bar, and he's seen by Bu's friend, but they don't say anything to each other there, I don't think. And then later they run into each other again, recognize each other from the bar, and start fighting. Why?
Was it?
Not just fighting. You have like an epic rivalry fight with knives on a moving platform, and it's basically like a climax of an action movie kind of.
Was that someone else?
The government had an idea that there was some organization that was kind of working against them, so they put out a spy. The CIA does this all the time, and not to give away the plot, but if you ever find a weird person knocking on your door, just take a picture of them and see what they do. And most people are like, oh, what was that? But a CIA agent will freak the fuck out. The
way that plot line, that subplot winds up, I was kind of like, why was it even here? Because it had no effect on the overall story.
It is a curious tangent, and I actually kind of liked it, and they even called back to it when they finally went back in I think it was the last volume, and poured some water on the spot and said, I don't I don't deserve to even visit your grave. But I think the original point was to say that the government was in some form onto them, and they were looking out for these kinds of things. It also applies pressure to the rebel group themselves. They know they're being watched. They know that now's the time. It kind of puts in place a timing mechanism. It's very, very subtle, but the way Otomo seems to build this story, everything has to play out to some sort of logical conclusion. So that one concludes there. He did need the guy to survive so he could give the information, which solidifies the timing mechanism between the rebel group and what the colonel is thinking. And then because he survived, he comes up later and then is put down on that platform. Yeah. So I mean, that kind of made sense to me, although the tangent was drawn out a little bit longer than it needed to be, in my mind too. But I think it did need to be there. There were some things that I felt were a little bit longer than they needed to be, and also a little derivative. That whole thing about Lord Akira. Was it? No.
Well,
what did they call him?
So, yeah, I think that's right.
Lord Akira and Master Tetsuo, and their whole like Mad Max Thunderdome thing. That just kind of bugged me.
Really? I love that part actually.
Because it was so derivative. Clearly the first two volumes.
Was that before Mad Max or after?
No, it was after. Very much after.
Okay.
If you look at this book, you can see very clear inspiration from two sources. The first half being from Blade Runner. I mean, absolutely, there's some Blade Runner stuff in there, but the second half being from Mad Max, and not the good one, or I should say, good ones, but from Beyond Thunderdome, and maybe a little bit of Road Warrior. But that bugged me.
Tying into that a little bit, I don't have a lot of time today, but I had one major point I wanted to talk about, which is the ending. The ending is one I clearly remember either reading the manga like a long time ago, because, small spoiler warning concerning the ending, I suppose. But
really, man, this book's 30 years old.
Well,
do courtesy.
There must be other people out there like me who haven't read it.
Yeah, they can pause now or whatever.
Until recently.
So it ends with, so basically the whole Mad Max situation was Akira and Tetsuo built this crazy little cult of, what do they call it, Liberated Tokyo or
the Great Tokyo Empire.
Tokyo Empire, yeah. And so everything kind of wraps up, and at the end of it, you have Tetsuo. You have an American ship flying in with supplies because all this shit's been going down. They're like, "Here, we're coming to help you," and Tetsuo is like, "No, fuck you. We're the Great Tokyo Empire, and we're claiming these resources. You're not giving them to us. We're claiming them, and we're taking the fucking ship well, and you can fuck off because we're the independent empire now." And
beginning of volume 4. You know.
No. I've got a bit on that because I had a similar mistake. I read the book in Japanese originally, and I mistook that. They are not American forces. They say clearly, we are Japan.
Oh.
And then Kaneda responds, "We don't care. This is the Great Tokyo Empire, and we appreciate these supplies you've given us. Thank you very much. But it's time for you to leave, and if you come back, you'll be recognized as a hostile invading force and be dealt with accordingly."
Oh, darn.
And so it was the split of Japan. The North had been taken by Russia. They say that early on, like in volume 3.
Here, no?
Yeah, that's it. And then the Great Tokyo Empire is Tokyo, or what's left of it, and then the rest of it, I guess, is Japan. But yeah, I don't know if that's actually gonna
help out for this case, but
yeah,
found it at least.
Oh darn! Because I the way I remembered it was with all the all the H-bomb reference and everything. I thought the ending was it was a patriot ending because it was like, no, Americans, we Japan can handle this. Is that a translation problem, or did I just get that wrong?
Well, you might be getting two different scenes mixed up because where where they say, okay, no, we're taking over this in the name of the Tokyo Empire. That's the beginning of Volume 4. But then at the end,
they mimic that scene, though.
They sort of mimic it, but they're saying, yeah, we don't need your help. We can help ourselves, rather than
because he kind of
hijack you.
Because that's the point where Tetsuo, like they confirm the Tokyo Empire thing, because it used to be Kanada's crazy little scheme.
Or
am I getting names wrong again? Yeah.
Tetsuo and Akira were running. Well, Tetsuo.
Tetsuo was making the weird empire, and until then, we're not taking it seriously until.
But then Kanada
walks in and he's like, "No, this is," and I'm still kind of left wondering what the message is there, because I feel like if we go back to Volume 1. They're just a bunch of kids looking for an identity. Like, the government doesn't care about them. They build these biker gangs. Life is tough. And that Tetsuo, however deranged that it was, kind of makes the Tokyo Empire as their, like, a version of their world. It's the biker gangs to a new level. The same idea of we were rejected by the government and by society, so we build our own thing, kind of.
But at the end, it's more like we don't want to take handouts. We want to take responsibility for ourselves.
I think what it is supposed to be, it's kind of a ham-fisted metaphor for we kids can take care of our own future. We don't need the mistakes of the past. And I think that's what it is, basically.
I thought it was going down that road too, but it's kind of weird since the whole biker gang thing is you can, it's clearly not presented as a reasonable alternative, and when Tetsuo had the Empire, it was just like a bunch of Beyond Thunderdome lunatics.
Yeah.
So it feels kind of weird to take that and be like, yeah, this is what we're doing.
Yeah, there was a couple of cases online where I see people making the argument that it's the representation of how Japan is to the entire world. That Japan, in theory, is represented by Tetsuo. How they're wanting more out of life, they're not getting it, and they're kind of seen as secondary as opposed to the world. And when given power, they rise up, they stand out on their own, and they kind of break free from it. But there are still dangerous elements outside of it. I don't know if it really plays in like that way, if it's really the same kind of comparison or not, but it could be like
here. That panel.
Yeah.
What are we looking at
the
here?
panel similar to the one in chapter 6 here. You people crazy, we're not invaders, we're sent by the Japanese government. But then we're in there stating as well, like, you need to, that's as far as you go. This is a sovereign nation. If you come again without an invitation, we're going to treat you as invaders. But yeah, I guess they were still stating, that they're the Japanese government.
I guess it was maybe the only way he could have a sort of a happy ending for all these kids, because the town is ruined, the government is fucked up. There's no way for them to.
Well, yeah,
they're not gonna go back to school and be happy. That wouldn't be a happy ending. So they have their biker gang is now the size of an empire, and that's
that school's destroyed 20 times over by the end.
Yeah,
not the most important thing anymore for you guys now, huh?
Yeah, I don't see anything like this ending that way. Oh, this kid on a bicycle or on a motorbike told us to fuck off. I guess we'll have to leave now. I just don't see it happening that way. Also, the ending, an appropriate ending would be a boring ending.
I do feel that I was flipping through it, and you have the part where they ride on their motorcycles, and I think one of the last pages is basically their friends. The friends from the main group of their original biker group who died very early.
Yeah.
They're kind of like
Oh yeah, Yamagata.
Ghost, yeah, they're
volume 1.
they're
And
ghost.
then he sees Tetsuo as he used to be.
Yeah, they're ghost riding behind him, and they're like together again, and that's a beautiful way to end it. So I feel like, why was the Tokyo Empire part? I don't really get its place in there, I suppose, because Tokyo Empire was Tetsuo's crazy thing. So I don't feel like there was a need for Kaneda to wave that flag one more time before.
Yeah.
Rebellious heart kind of thing, like never letting the flame die, never kind of giving
'Cause
up your hope.
Yeah, it's very much presented as like the final statement of, because these 6 books are so many pages, and this seems to be like, well, at least it's presented like that, and this is what it's all about. And I'm like, what is it about though?
Yeah, I'm not sure that he knew how to end it.
I suppose.
There is kind of a. I don't know if he actually feels this way, so I may be just reaching here, but it kind of feels like he was exhausted and just wanted to finish, and had no more story that he could kind of put into it, and no better way to end it. Because he had been running so hard, and in the middle of this 6-volume set, he put out a 2-hour movie, the likes of which Japan has never seen before or since. Up until that point, it was the most expensive animation production in Japan.
When did the movie come out?
1986.
Okay, so the manga was not finished yet.
No, it was not finished.
No, that's interesting.
That was the weird thing about it. In the middle of this manga series, like, oh, here's a movie, boom, explains the entire plot, and people look at it like, yeah, but what does it mean? It's okay, well, I'll finish the comic. Yeah, but what does it mean?
Harry Potter did.
Yeah, kind of. Or Game of Thrones did.
Game of Thrones.
Well, not that bad, but the movie also was the last Japanese animation film to be made without digital layering. So every image there is on a cell, and you can only go 7 layers deep before you lose the first layer visibly. So it's an incredible feat. After that, digital layering, and they can layer 100 deep, and it doesn't matter. But yeah, it's quite a monstrous work. So I can imagine that at the end of this, like, all right, fine, I'm fucking done already.
But yeah, I mean, some of the ending, well, not just the ending, but you can certainly see a fair number of like kind of manga tropes in it, and the way that people are shocked by everything. There's no small reactions like, what? Do you mean to tell me that? And when somebody's nervous about getting found out, they're like dripping with sweat.
Yeah. That's why I think it's the time. Anime and manga still was that. Even though it had a serious tone to it, even though the look was nothing like anything we've ever seen, it still kept that fun, goofy aspect to it of like, oh, it's a comic, it's a manga, whatever you want to say.
Yeah, the same stylization.
I think it also shows when manga is at its best is when it's emulating movies, and this is like a very Hollywood style story with like, if this was a movie, it'd be a huge budget movie with all these building shots and explosions, and it just has that epic Hollywood movie feel to it, while still being grounded enough in the characters that it's not just a cheesy movie about New York getting destroyed. It's more than that, but it does take a scale that I think is not often seen in manga in general, a scale that's hard to do in this medium, just because if you're not a movie, it's these backgrounds are insane, drawing this many panels of backgrounds. So I think it's one of the only books that really attempts to capture that movie scale feeling of a town and a town getting destroyed. It's though it's a classic, and it's a magnificent read. Does have its flaws. Some of it almost inherent to I believe the genre and how these books are made. You know, the pressure that's on the authors and the editors coming in and everything.
And the assistants.
Assistants burning out and dying.
Who are drawing that last spread of Volume 6 with the Tokyo buildings and everything. How long did that take?
Oh yeah, I mentioned a little quote before, but I heard some professional mangaka had this story going around where that apparently in drawing some of these building scenes, he would put the pages on the ground and have the assistants take the ruler all the way to the other room to decide the vanishing point was so far away that they had to use 2 rooms and just draw these absurd long lines to get it.
I do take a little bit of comfort in that because I do something somewhat similar on my own pages, and I always felt that I was so unprofessional. Like how do real artists do this? But yeah. I guess I'm in good company.
Blood, sweat, and tears is the only way that stuff gets done.
I'm doing it the 30-year-old way rather than the modern computer way.
And I also think it's funny to look at how this was made in the 80s, and it's supposed to be about the future, but he didn't anticipate some things about the future. And of course, you could say, well, World War III happened, and so technological advancement didn't happen at the same pace, but there's no internet, no cell phones. At one point in Volume 2, Ryu hands Nezu a film to get developed, and people are smoking like it's the 80s.
Creative liberties.
Still kind of,
Well, there's still more smoking here than America, I guess. Yeah. But a lot of people, the smoking rate has definitely gone down here since I got here 31 years ago. Also, you can see the late 20th century Tokyo subway logo that is actually no longer used. But yeah, just funny to see what was not anticipated. We've been going almost an hour here. You gonna go?
I'm gonna need to go.
No.
If you guys wanna wrap it.
Hey,
Mulele was a little late, so it's we're going over the clock a bit.
What, I'm late. You're early. What is this?
Well, we've only got the room for 15 more minutes anyway, so I need to wrap it up.
Oh, all right.
I'll get them.
Sit down, man.
I'll get y'all. Well, if we're wrapping up, I'll get them.
We got beers after this too.
Like the text said.
Like the prophecy foretold.
Yeah. So, given that it is kind of dated in some ways, what's the value still of reading it now?
Or I feel maybe we can end on what aside from the analytics, how did you feel reading it? What was if someone is like, hey, what did you think about Akira? What would you say to him?
Well, I enjoyed reading it the first time through. I found reading it the second time through was a little frustrating. Once I knew how it ended, I got kind of impatient with how slowly it unfolded. And there's that whole thing in, I think, Volume 3 after Akira has been found when he's getting passed around from party to party, and some of those people don't even survive the volume. Then I wasn't sure it was really necessary to drag that chase out for so long. So yeah, I'm not sure. Of course, the art, as we've mentioned, is worth looking at again and again. But yeah, as Mulele and I were saying before, I think Domu is a stronger story. But I would recommend reading this once at least.
Yeah, definitely it's something where if you're into how a story like science fiction can be told, Akira is a very good read. I think that you will find someone to love through the story, even if they're, sorry Oscar, not as supportive as others, or not as strong as others, or not held in the same kind of light nowadays as in others, but you can still kind of latch on to someone likable and move through the story in a different way. You can, I don't know, develop your own interest with it. I think that my own takeaway from this is that this taught me about how you don't have to rush through to make a story, and you can highlight the environment being the story just as much as the people being the story as well. I take in as much as the environment as much as the characters when I did read through this or watch it. But yeah, it's not like a pinnacle thing. It's not like, oh my god, you must read this story. But if you like reading comics, you like a good story, it's not a bad one to read, in my opinion.
Mulele?
I've been inspired by this book 3 times in my life in major ways. The first time when I first read it in America, and it inspired me to come here. Second time after living here for years and going through my divorce and practically giving up on drawing and all of that shit that happened to me, I went to see the Gengaten, which had the Akira pages, the actual pages. And I saw the artwork, and it re-sparked my desire to make comics and just set my life on a new comic path where I met you guys. But and then reading this now has made me much more curious about reading other manga, which I haven't been for many years.
He might read manga.
I
might read something other than our critiquing comics material.
I think so. I think so. With American mainstream comics, I'm pretty much done. And unless they've got an Akira out there waiting for me. And if anybody writes in and says, "Why'd the last man get fucked?"
Or Saga.
Yeah, or Saga.
Yeah, I just went to the Kinokyo bookstore, and they were like, "Oh, 2019 like best-selling with Saga."
Yeah,
like, right
yeah.
there. And I just reached over for Sonic the Hedgehog. I'm sorry, but
Hey, go for what you love. If Saga doesn't do it for you, fuck Saga. But this made me curious to go back and look at other comics, Japanese comics, and really get into it. I'm not so sure about just running to a newsstand and grabbing the latest volume of Young Magazine, but looking for those choice collections where I can dip in and get a good story.
Wasn't there also like Metropolis? Am I thinking of that correctly?
Yeah, there's a movie.
The Fritz Lang one or the anime one?
No, I'm thinking of a manga story that was...
I think there was a Tezuka story called Metropolis.
Yes.
And they made a movie that's based on it, but it hardly... It uses some of the characters, but...
It also has a lot of like heavy detail to it as well. Big
I
volume books
love
like
that movie
this.
so much.
So...
Got the DVD, but still gotta rewatch that one.
If I can find the book, because there's a store near me that has some of them on discount. So if I can grab one of them, I might throw it your way. Then
You got Pluto.
That's the other one I was thinking of as well. I always forget.
Also
the name.
Tezuka. Yeah.
Yeah,
it's also Tezuka.
I hear that one is really, really good, and I like that artist. Still never finished Billy Bat though. But anyway, so one last thing about this whole Akira thing. Now, 30 years after this is done, Otomo Katsuhiro has decided to come back and do something. I don't know what exactly, but apparently they're producing a new work, animated series, animated movie. No one's quite sure, or at least the last time I checked, no one was quite sure what it was going to be, but it was going to be something, and he was going to be directly involved, and it would be a Japanese production. They were doing a movie. Taika Waititi was supposed to be the director, but he basically opted out or ran out of time or whatever. Taika Waititi's thing on it was use Japanese actors, do not use American actors, do not transplant it to New York. Because at one time Leonardo DiCaprio owned the rights, and he still might. And Leonardo DiCaprio was supposed to play Kaneda.
The gangs of Neo New York.
Neo New York, yes. Yes, gangs of Neo New York.
With dancing as well? Oh, it would be amazing.
Yeah.
Bad.
But anyway, how do you feel about this getting remade? It kind of... Does it do anything for you, or do you want this to stay in the past?
It'd be interesting to see what his take on it is now. I would like to see the original anime movie first, but
it's on Netflix.
I don't feel that Akira covers, like, it's a technical marvel. It's the artwork is just groundbreaking and amazing. The story is good. It's like a good fun ride, but I don't feel like... We're talking about Tezuka, so the first name pops into my head would be Hinotori. Haven't read it yet, but that's like, I don't feel like Akira has like a core message that it really stands for something. While it's good in its own rights, I don't feel like it has this soul and this message that needs to be preserved and done again. Like it has a movie, it has these books. I don't, because it feels very movie inspired. So to make a movie of it would be kind of, I don't know, going back a step. It's like you're gonna make a movie and try to make it as epic and full scale as the manga, which you're probably gonna fail at, or is gonna look too cheesy. But it's a big name and people want to remake big name stuff all the time. I don't really like that. I think Akira is fine where it is, and if you haven't read it, definitely pick it up and see for yourself. But it's a...
Hold on. I gotta call Fal.
Go ahead.
This has nothing to do with Star Wars.
No, it has nothing to do with Star Wars, but it actually has something to do with Ghost in the Shell, man. How did you feel about that movie when it came out?
When it came out, well, I liked it at first, but then someone pointed out to me that they were basically baiting me, because I was like, I was having nostalgia flashbacks, and then it turns out that movie is like a shot-for-shot remake of all the old movies. It's like I liked all the parts with like the attaché case and like like the dolls and everything, but like every part of it I liked was retraceable to a previous Ghost in the Shell work. So it was, I liked the movie because it was reminding me of these other movies I liked. But once I realized it was doing that, it's like, well, I might as well see the original ones, because that's where all those shots were in.
Okay.
This movie's not doing anything new for.
I'm glad you've evolved your position on that film.
Yeah, that's a hot mess. But, and if Akira wants to do that again, fine, it'll probably sell, but I don't think I'll go see it.
No. I don't know. I might, but of course I'm notorious for not seeing movies, as Mulele well knows. So,
man, I'll be there with a hot mess in my pants for that film. But whether it's good or not is a whole other thing. Yeah, it may be exactly as Oscar said, just pointing to the nostalgia I have for this, rather than being its own thing.
Well, if there eventually is going to be a podcast on the movie, there's a high chance I might be on it. So let's just say that I don't want to go see it.
Fair enough.
Okay, but listeners should at least pick up the manga and take a look at this.
Yeah.
Okay.
Akira was most recently published in English by Kodansha Press. There are copies of it available on Amazon and elsewhere. Support this and all of our shows by joining us on Patreon. Our tiers start at just $2 a month. Pledge at least $4 a month to get our Patreon-only series, Spider-Man 1963 and Tim Catches Up with the MCU, where this Saturday we'll release our review of Spider-Man Far From Home. At $4, you can also get opportunities to participate in the show. Go to patreon.com/deconcomics to join the fun. You can also help us get noticed by reviewing us on Apple or any other podcast source. Do your shopping at deconstructingcomics.com/Amazon so that we get a percentage of the sale. And share our episodes on your social media. We appreciate your support in bringing Deconstructing Comics, Critiquing Comics, and To the Bat Poles to a larger audience. Our theme is from bensound.com. Have you looked at our website lately? I've updated the look of the site, so check it out and tell me what you think. The comments function is now working again, so go ahead and leave posts on specific episodes. It's at deconstructingcomics.com. If you're looking for some constructive feedback on your comic, send it to us and Mulele and I will critique it on our spin-off podcast, Critiquing Comics. Send it to mail@deconstructingcomics.com. We'll read at least 30 pages of it and critique it on the show. Next week, Kumar and I discuss the classic European science fiction and fantasy comic, The Incal, by Alexandro Jodorowsky and Mobius. Till then, this is Tim, and thanks for listening to Deconstructing Comics.